So it's the age-old question since time began, or at least since PC gaming started, and that's what I want to lay my hard-earned money down on and spend my precious game time playing. Here's two excellent space strategy games, Stellaris and Endless Space 2, and let's take a look at them. Tutorials in both games are really good, and both of them take a similar approach and make learning the game pretty easy. Both tutorials use advisors. The Endless Space 2 has an advisor that usually appears in the upper right hand corner. In Endless Space 2, there's typically several dialog boxes that are advanced by clicking on an arrow key either to the left or to the right. Also, this tutorial is contextually sensitive, so clicking on something like your system will bring up another tutorial box. As you can see, that one's got several panels to work your way through. So overall, it's pretty good. Sometimes I find what to click on next to be a problem, but one thing it does have in its favor is it won't let you take a turn if there's something without warning you, if there's something major you've overlooked, like assigning a research project or assigning production to a planet. Stellaris also has an advisor that appears in the upper right hand corner, but unlike the advisor in Endless Space, this advisor has a voice. And
good day, Mr. President. I am Veer.
His name is Veer, obviously.
My job is to offer advice.
And you can turn him off completely, or have a full tutorial, or just a partial tutorial. I honestly think this tutorial does a little bit better job than Endless Space 2, simply because of the voiceover, and also the fact that I think it does a little bit better job walking you through the game basics. It's also contextually sensitive, meaning that if you click on something, you usually get the advisor to come up and tell you what it's all about and give you an idea of what to do next. I next want to compare resources between the two games, but to make it fair, I turned off all the DLCs for both games, since I have a lot more DLCs for Stellaris than I do Endless Space. But anyway, Endless Space has 5 major quote-unquote economic systems. That's food, industry, dust, science, and influence. Most of those are self-explanatory. The one that might be a little confusing is influence. That's your diplomatic power, how you can influence other empires, and it's also used to expand your empire's borders. Stellaris, on the other hand, has what I consider quote-unquote 8 economic systems: energy credits, minerals, food, consumer goods, alloys, influence, and unity. And all those are basically used for different things. Energy is like the currency in the game. Minerals is what you use to build chips with, and so on and so on. Alloys can also be used to build chips with. Influence is similar to influence in Endless Space 2. It's used for diplomatic actions and to also expand your empire's borders. Unity is more of use for traditions and things like that. So to put all in a nutshell, it has more systems, game systems, which makes it a little more complex, which can be a good or bad thing depending on your point of view. Research and technology is one area where Endless Space 2 and Stellaris are pretty different. At the technology screen on Endless Space 2, technology is represented by a wheel that's got 4 sections to it: economy and trade, what's this one? Military, science and exploration, and empire development. So if you scroll in, you can see what's available to you. Ones that are completed are fully colored in. Ones that are available are kind of a black and white icon, and the ones that are not available have a gray background. So you can queue things up too, like astrofinance is one I want to research. It will give you suggestions of what to research next, so multi-thread management might be another one, and that would queue that up. It also gives you an idea what's next in line as you progress in the levels. So that's quite a bit different than what Stellaris does. Research and technology in Stellaris is quite a bit different than it is in Endless Space 2. For one thing, you can conduct research in 3 areas at the same time: physics, society, and engineering. And clicking on any one of these alerts will bring up my research dialog box. So I can just select the research that I want for each category, and I'm just randomly picking these. so I can do 3 at once. But unlike Endless Space 2, when I conduct research, I don't have any idea of what's going to come up next. It could be something different from these 3. Although I do get a hint that if with this padlock, that if I do that research or conduct that research, it will unlock some further technology that otherwise I wouldn't be able to get to. Surveying systems is done a little differently in both games as well. In Endless Space 2, you get a beautiful rendering of what the planets are you're looking at, and immediate knowledge as soon as you warp into the system. So it'll walk through all the planets one by one. I really like this. This is a nice feature. And at the end, you get a nice little readout of what each planet has. In Stellaris, you don't gain knowledge of the system as soon as your ship enters the system. You have to send a science ship in to explore and survey each planet one by one. Once your science ship is done surveying the system, you get a notice that it's done. You also get a readout, minerals, planets that are habitable, stuff like that.
Complete.
But in all honesty, that's not nearly as gorgeous as the Endless Space 2 rendering, but it's still pretty effective. I've done a lot of comparing of the similarities between the 2 games, Endless Space 2 and Stellaris, but what are they different? What does one game have that another game doesn't? Where are they different? As you can tell, I get tongue-tied a lot, so I apologize. But in this game, really, I don't think this game has anything extra that Stellaris doesn't have. Like, you've got quests and events, which gives you perks depending on whether you find them or not, like what your current quest is, what you've completed, what you failed. But really, that's pretty much equivalent to the situation log in Stellaris, where you get issued missions and things to do and things to complete for bonuses. The other thing here is hero management. And at first, I didn't think Stellaris had an equivalent to this, but really they do with their leaders. Both heroes and leaders in Stellaris give your fleets and planets specific bonuses. Something else, there is one difference that I wanted to bring out while I'm on it, and that is the victory conditions. Here in Endless Space 2, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different victory conditions, and it tells you what place you're in for each one. As for Stellaris, well, I'll talk about that when I get to Stellaris. So as I was saying when I was talking about Endless Space 2, I did not think Stellaris had an equivalent for the quests and events menu, but it really does, and that's called the situation log. And here you get issued missions and objectives and things like that anyway, like energy build some energy districts, generator districts, survey systems, etc., things like that. Also, Endless Space 2 has heroes, and in Stellaris, those are leaders. And you've got governors, scientists, admirals, and generals, so a nice selection of heroes, leaders in Stellaris as well. There are a few things Stellaris has that Endless Space 2 doesn't have. One of them is the market. Here you can sell minerals and food and things like that to get energy credits. You can also buy the same things for energy credits. Another thing that's pretty neat about this is the expansion planner. It tells you, it lists all the planets you've explored or you've located and what their habitability rating is. Man, I sure get tongue-tied. Let's say that again. And whether or not you can colonize them and the reason why. One other thing that's worth mentioning is the claims system. You have to make claims on star systems and planets before you can take them if you go to war with somebody. So one thing that is pretty different between the 2 games are the victory conditions. In Endless Space 2, you have like 6 conditions you can satisfy, any one of which will win the game for you. In Stellaris, you only have 1 victory condition, and that's your overall score. But it includes things like economic strength, empires you've conquered, things like that. So it pretty much combines all the victory conditions from the other game into one on this one. In this game, my victory conditions have been disabled because I was using it more as a demonstration game than anything else. But when they're enabled, it's usually set to the year 2250, although you can set that year to anything you want. Which game would I recommend? Well, actually, I would recommend them both. I've got a lot of hours in Stellaris, and I've got several hours in the Endless Space 2. I admit I like Stellaris a little better, but I don't regret the time and money I spent on Endless Space 2 either. They're both great games, and they both got a unique flavor to them and a unique approach to a space strategy game. So hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you later.